Well, in the merry month of May, from me home I started, left the girls at home. I saw the broken hearted saluted father there. Yes, me darling mother, I drank a pint to bear me grief and tears. There's mother then out the reef the corn, laver I was born. Cow the stout I turned the banish, ghost and gobble and bran, you pair the brows, rattle all of the bars, frighten all of the dogs for the rocky road. The double I 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, hot the hair, the tunny out down the rocky road, and all the ways the double I went for the
my name is Marcus Howard, and my great-granduncle is Arthur Greene.
My name is Pádraig Agnew. I'm from Dundalk. I'm the great-grandson of Hugh Kearney.
My name is Eoin McGuill, and my relative is James McGuill. He was my grandfather.
My name is Neil. My relative, great-grandfather of mine, James Dunne. He'll be from 5 Killane Tyrellstown, Dundalk, Castlebellingham Road.
My name is Madge Boyle. I'm from Donegal originally, and I am the grandniece of Charles McGee, who died in Castlebellingham in 1916.
And God save Ireland, save heroes. God save Ireland, save all. Whether on the scaffold's high or at the building's high, all back to when Ireland dare we fall. Cairns around the crew of walls, still the courage proudly goes. They told the hearts to love them far and near. For the babyless true and brave, o'er the ocean's swelling waves, and friends of dear old Ireland ever true. And God save Ireland, save heroes. God save Ireland, save all. Whether on the scaffold's high or the battle's field beside, all the battle went for Ireland there we fall.
After the 100-year anniversary of the 1798 rebellion, commemorated by the Maid of Erin statue, a wave of Irish nationalism swelled, culminating in a protest in 1910 in Dundalk Town Square.
The two names were Thomas Herty, who came from Bridge Street, and the other person was Patrick or Paddy Hughes, who came from Park Street. They made an impression on him as a young man when they stood up in the market square in Dundalk. Now that's in the centre of the town. There was a small group of 10 to 12 people there, and they were carrying an Irish flag. As the story as I heard it was to protest against the proclamation led by the accession of King George V.
In 1910, there was the British military, the British Army and the RIC lined up in formation at the courthouse and the square in Dundalk. We were singing God Save Our King and raising the Union flag, a protest of Sinn Féin and Irish volunteers stood at the statue of the Maid of Erin in Dundalk and responded to this by singing God Save Ireland, and they hoisted a green flag on a pole.
The 10 men took up position on the ground flagstones of the 98 monument, facing the courthouse, and continuously interrupted the sheriff by singing patriotic songs and shouting, "To hell with the king," etc., etc., and denying the sheriff's right to proclaim George as our king. They were approached by RIC and military officers to withdraw or be removed by force. Things became so bad that the sheriff interrupted reading the King's proclamation to read the Riot Act to legalise the order he had decided to give to remove opposition. Having done so, the RIC were ordered to fix bayonets, but the charge never took place. The explanation given afterwards being that the men stood on private property and could not be removed. So to the end these men remained, and when the Union Jack was run up, one of their members put a ladder against the monument, hoisting the only Irish flag they had, green with a harp, and proclaiming the Irish Republic.
And because they were on private property, which was around the statue, the RIC or police couldn't arrest them. Before the square was done up now, right, the statue were connected to the ground. There was like part of the statue, it was like a pavement coming out that was joined to it.
Thus, so far as Dundalk was concerned, the Irish Republic was proclaimed in 1910. I witnessed this scene and joined Sinn Féin that week. In 1911, Constance Markievicz delivered a lecture on the Manchester martyrs at a commemoration concert in the town, and in 1913 it was Major John McBride's turn.
The two men that my grandfather was friendly with, Hertie and Hughes, they set up a committee which was supplemented by John Redmond, the leader of the Irish Parliamentary Party. And this move of having these supporters of Redmond in the local committee did not please some people in Dundalk apparently. But however, they decided for the sake of unity that they would work together. So I can just imagine the consternation in Dundalk for these upstarts, I suppose, for want of a better word, to start rocking the boat. You know, what initially started off as a bit of enthusiasm then was kind of cut short by the start of the First World War.
I was born into a Fenian family. I was initiated and sworn into the IRB by Tom Hertie in 1912. I could see little use in it. We were constantly hatching and nothing came of our plans. I attended a meeting of the volunteers held in the Rink, presided over by Matt Comerford in 1914. This body was known as the Irish National Volunteers. I did not join this body when I saw who were leading and training the volunteers. I got disgusted, and I believed the volunteers were being used as a training ground for the British Army. Paddy Hughes, Sean Mac Entee, Owen Grant, Joe Beryl, Hugh Kearney, two Butterley brothers, Jack Quinn, myself and some others discussed the question on numerous occasions in the Boyle O'Reilly Hall, and it is there that we started the Irish Volunteers. The Irish Volunteers in the early stages numbered only about 13 members. Paddy Hughes was the driving force behind the Irish Volunteers. He was looked up to by all Republicans in Dundalk and County Louth.
This is the John Boyle O'Reilly Hall. This is the hall that the volunteers trained in on the lead up to Easter Week 1916. This is the back of the John Boyle O'Reilly Hall. It's now a car park. This is where the volunteers trained in secret because the RIC found another hall and trashed it. So this was a secret location where they were completely enclosed, where they used to drill, march and do basics arms drills on the lead up to Easter Week 1916. As you can see, the back of the hall is just over there beside that stone building and up on the left.
Okay.
About mid-1915, Paddy Hughes organised the Irish Volunteers, the efforts to reorganise the volunteers in Dundalk as Irish Volunteers.
And Paddy Hughes was the man I made reference to earlier. He made frequent periodical visits to Dublin, and it was about that time that he informed my grandfather that something serious was about to take place.
Our meetings were subjected to physical violence in attempts to back them up, and our membership was small for the population of Dundalk and the surrounding districts.
A lot of the young men of Dundalk joined the armed forces of Britain. So, you know, there was a split there.
We got much annoyance from the National Volunteers, and we were attacked on the streets on many occasions. Once at a meeting in the town hall, we were attacked and some of our men beaten. Archie Herron attended this meeting in uniform and was attacked coming into the town hall. Shortly before Easter Week 1916, a quantity of lead was procured by Sean Mac Entee in the powerhouse. Shotgun cartridges were procured from the traders in town. John Kieran and I spent about 3 weeks working a mould in the Boyle O'Reilly Hall, making slugs for the cartridges. We loaded all the cases with slugs. Material was procured from my mother and she made haversacks. When some of the neighbours asked her what she was doing, she told them she was making aprons for her granddaughters in Glasgow.
There was a military instructor coming to Dundalk to give the volunteers final intensified training. And this man was called O'Hannigan.
Donal O'Hannigan witness statement. About 3 weeks before the rebellion, Tom Clark sent for me. I met him and Sean McDermott at Clark's shop in Parnell Street. McDermott said to me, "You had better resign from your job in Guinness's. There will be something doing about Easter, and we are giving you a command, and from now on it will be a whole-time job for you." He informed me I would be taking charge of the Louthmeath, South Down, South Armagh and South Monaghan area. McDermott told me Paddy Hughes, although not an IRB man, was absolutely dependable to the last. He also told me that Sean Mac Entee, who worked for Dundalk Urban Council, was a very capable man. On Tuesday morning, I went to see Patrick Pearse at St Enda's at 11 a.m. Pearse went through the plans for the rising. In Sean Boylan's presence, he was also IRB, Pearse gave me instructions about my own role in a general plan. I was to mobilise the volunteers from the area at Tara in Meath on Sunday Easter at 7 p.m. On completion of mobilisation, I was to read the proclamation of the Irish Republic. Another one of O'Hannigan's tasks was to free German internees from Oldcastle internment camp in Meath, because there were artillerymen among them. It was expected that British artillery from the Athlone depot would be captured, and that these men would be useful. O'Hannigan also says that Pearse told him about the good supply of arms coming from Germany, including artillery pieces. When O'Hannigan protested that Tara was a very inconvenient place for mobilisation, Pearse insisted that for historical reasons Tara was all important, and he wanted the proclamation of the Republic read there. O'Hannigan, in his own words, has said, "In the case of the country, it was expected they would rise, and a general instruction to them was that they were to attack and capture the British garrisons in their area. Thomas McCurtain and McSweeney had worked out a plan to cover Munster, including the landing of arms. The plan was kept by Sean McDermott in the safe in Dawson Street." McDermott was in contact with O'Hannigan through couriers or in person with people like O'Hannigan and others throughout the country. On the completion of mobilisation, I was to read the proclamation of the Irish Republic and then to march via Dunshaughlin on Blanchardstown, where we would contact Sean Boylan and the Dunboyne men. We were to seize the railway at Blanchardstown and cut the line there to prevent the English artillery coming from Athlone. The Fingal Battalion were to contact us on our left flank, and the Kildare men were to come in on our right flank. The Wicklow and South County Dublin area was to be on the right of them again. In this way, we would form a ring around the city. The ring would extend from Swords via Blanchardstown, Lucan, Tala, and from thence across the hills to the sea. Pearse informed me that we would receive an adequate supply of arms and ammunition when we reached Blanchardstown. Pearse also explained to me that the object in taking and organising the line around the city had the following objects. 1. To prevent an attack on the city from the rear. 2. To prevent reinforcements reaching the city. 3. To maintain a supply of food for the volunteers and people in the city. And 4. In the case of an evacuation of the city being forced on them, to hold lines of retreat open towards the west. Sean Mac Entee witness statement. It was on Holy Thursday afternoon that Paddy Hughes came into my office at the Electricity Works, Dundalk. "Mac," said he, "the word has come." His eyes glittered with excitement, though his voice was quite cool and steady. "We are to march with full equipment and to make Tara on Sunday night." "You're not making fun, Paddy," said I, my heart pumping wildly. "No," he answered, "the messenger has just come." Sorcha McMahon was selected by Kathleen Clark to compile a list of reliable girls in the days leading up to the rising. These girls would travel around the country with the message that volunteers should mobilise on Easter Sunday. Sorcha went to Dundalk and Monaghan.
Hugh Kearney and Arthur Greene mobilised here on Easter Sunday morning, and they marched from here up to the RD workhouse on the RD road, Dundalk, and then on to Tyrellstown.
And even though they were very enthusiastic, they didn't have a lot of ammunition with them. They only had 20 shotguns, 3 rifles and 3 revolvers. So one does have to admire their courage, that they were prepared to take on an empire with so few arms.
Our armament at Easter week 1916 were about 20 to 25 shotguns. Many of the men had revolvers which they purchased themselves. We had no rifles in Dundalk. There were rifles in RD belonging to the National Volunteers, which we intended to commandeer on Easter Sunday.
And the plan was that they would meet with the Meath Volunteers on the Hill of Tara at 7 o'clock that evening and march on to Dublin to protect the outside of Dublin from approaching army. And countermanding order was published in the Independent on the Sunday.
You know, with all this countermanding orders, he was trying to believe that the message in the Independent was a piece of bluff. You know, the countermanding orders, to throw the British authorities off what was really going to happen. But doubts enter his mind. And, you know, he thought back to previous insurrection attempts. And was this the last attempt, their last attempt, and was it also going to be subjected to failure? You know, that McNeill's dispatch had to be authenticated. And this could only be done by approaching two well-known Gaelic League enthusiasts whose integrity was the highest, and they both were familiar with McNeill's signature. The late Miss Angela Matthews was the Vice President of the Dundalk Gaelic League, and she was also a countermand leader. And then the other fella was a Reverend Peter McArdle, and he was attached to St Mary's College, which is the Marist. And they both confirmed that it was indeed McNeill's signature. So the question then of getting the dispatch to the Dundalk Corps before any action should take place made every moment important. To ensure absolute security in the dispatch's delivery, my grand uncle John, he took one of the cars, and Sean Mac Entee took another by a different road.
Yeah, this is the workhouse hill, or the actual site where the workhouse used to stand. There's now a present day building in its place, but this is the building here that 40 plus men marched from the John Boyle O'Reilly Hall up here to the RD Road and met another 50 men, and from here they mobilised. This road is the RD Road. Just behind me is the town of Dundalk and the RD Road coming out.
But 97 men left Workhill House.
I was a sergeant major at the time, and I counted the entire mobilisation at the workhouse. After I had sent old men and youngsters home, whom I considered were unfit for active service, the remaining mobilised men numbered 75. We marched to a place called Gilbertstown, where O'Hannigan told me to take a cycle and go into RD to call to Brophy's Yard and find out if the Dunleer men were there.
Easter Sunday morning, 23rd of April 1916, 97 men left Workhill House, reaching RD about 2 p.m, where they seized about 20 Redmondite rifles.
On my way into RD, I met Phil McMahon, and he asked where the Dundalk men were. I told him they were coming along the road, and he said that he had the rifles ready to be taken up in RD. I went to Brophy's Yard and found the Dunleer men there. The Dunleer men joined the Dundalk contingent when they came in at the Foster Monument in RD. Shortly after, Phil McMahon and Donal O'Hannigan went away and later returned with about 15 rifles. When we were about a mile outside RD, a dispatch rider came to us with McNeill's countermanding orders. Paddy Hughes and O'Hannigan consulted on the matter, and O'Hannigan stated that he was not taking orders from McNeill, that P.H. Pearce was his commanding officer. I remember distinctly O'Hannigan using those words. Paddy Hughes and O'Hannigan sent Joe Barrell on a motorcycle to Dublin to make inquiries as to what was right or what was wrong. I sent a dispatch rider, Joe Barrell, on his motorcycle to Dublin to call to 21 Upper Dorset Street if there was trouble in the city, and if not, to go to Liberty Hall to Connolly. I gave him a written dispatch. He was to contact Pearce also. He set off, but never returned. Later, I sent 2 more men to Dublin on push bicycles, and they were to return to Slane. These men never returned either. We got refreshments in Slane, and each man had a good meal. We had about 60 RIC accompanying us now under a local district inspector. I asked the inspector to withdraw his men over the bridges to the south side of the river, as I was taken over this side. He agreed and withdrew, and did not come near us again. I mounted a guard on the bridge to ensure that they did not recross. After Beryl left, we resumed the march to Slane and arrived there about 6:30.
Sean Mac Entee decided to leave Slane and go by train to Dublin to find out whether the rising was on or not.
They had some refreshments and left Cullen about 12 noon, heading in the direction of Dundalk via Dunleo, reaching Dunleo about 4 p.m, tired and hungry. On to Arthur Greene, where a messenger overtook them with news of the rising in Dublin, and they immediately arrested 2 policemen who were trailing them.
At about 6 p.m. on that Monday evening, when we had arrived at Lurgan Green near Dundalk, Mac Entee arrived on a motorcycle. He had a dispatch from Pearse, which read, "Dublin is in arms. You will carry out your original instructions."
The late Paddy Hughes said that any man who wanted to go home could.
I had about 28 men at the time, and all our original arms and our transport. I organised these into 2 squads, and on the double deployed 1 squad to the south of our position and 1 to the north. This was to surround the RIC, and while others were there at the time, they were to close in on a whistle blast from me. I then declared to all present, including the RIC, that a republic had been proclaimed, and that headquarters of the republic had been established at the GPO Dublin. I addressed the RIC, telling them I proclaimed the republic as being in existence, and that they were now my prisoners. They were to hand over their arms and documents. I told my own men that as long as the RIC surrendered peacefully, they were not to molest them or injure them in any way. I also ordered that all persons who approached our position were to be made prisoners to prevent information getting through to Dundalk, which was a British garrison town. The RIC all surrendered, and I lined them up along a wall together with all the civilians present. I put a guard on them with instructions to shoot if they tried any funny tricks. One Sergeant Williams at first refused to surrender documents he had on him. I had to threaten him with my revolver. He then handed them up. There were notes on all our movements from the time we had left Dundalk on Sunday. We then collected a few horses and carts which came along. I then saw a big car approaching from the Dublin direction. I put up my hand for it to stop. It did not stop. I had a rifle and pointed it at the driver's head when it was about 20 yards away. The car halted at once. It contained 6 British officers and the driver, all in uniform. I informed them that a republic had been proclaimed, and that a state of war now existed, and ordered them to get out with their hands up and stand over by the wall.
Myself, Pat Casey, John Barrett, James Agnew and Tom Sharkey were ordered to hold up 3 motors there.
I placed them against the wall and put a guard on them. I then called a volunteer and told him to search them. They had no arms or documents on them. I put another volunteer in the car behind the driver and made him turn his car around and face southwards. Another car of similar type now approached, and it also contained the same number of officers. This was followed again by a third. The occupants were all treated in a similar manner, and the cars turned around by their drivers. We now had an additional 18 officers and 3 drivers prisoners, and their 5 cars. I put some men on the horse vehicles and moved them off towards Slane again. I allowed the prisoners, including the military officers and police, to go and put a man on each car behind the military drivers.
We commandeered the cars and made all occupants prisoners, also 2 British officers and some soldiers. We put the prisoners into a farm building for shelter.
It was then that they decided to commandeer cars that were coming from the Ferry House races, and that they were going to proceed on to Tara, but they decided to stop in Castlebellingham to get provisions, and they went into Burns' shop and got some food there. The RIC men and the local Castlebellingham police station, they came out to see what was happening. So they were approached by Mac Entee, who told the two RIC men to stand alongside the railings in Castlebellingham. And then shortly afterwards, Constable McGee arrived on bicycle, and he was asked to dismount, and they searched him, and there was a dispatch taken from him, and I don't know what was in that message. Soon after that, another car arrived, and it was Lieutenant Robert Dunville. He did not want to come out of the car, so there was a bit of aggression shown by him, but they told him that he would be shot if he did not stand along the railing, so he did so. And then Sean Mac Entee decided that it was time to leave the village, and he told Paddy McHugh to make sure that the RIC men and the Captain Donald remained at the railings. And when the cars were leaving the town or the village, it was thought that Captain Dunville made a move to get an arm.
Major Dunville was particularly cross, and he attempted to take a rifle from one of our men.
There was a fire shot by Paddy McHugh, but Paddy always claims that a second shot ran out that evening, but nobody claimed responsibility for the other shooting. Anyway, Charles McGee fell. He seemingly said, "Oh, my arm," so he had been shot in the arm, and he fell. And Captain Dunville, he was also shot. And it was a doctor came from the village, Dr. O'Hannigan, and it was clear to him that Charles McGee was in difficulty, and Charles McGee was taken to the Old Louth Hospital, and at about 7:30, and he died about 9:30 that evening. And I think some of the last words that he spoke were to tell his mother and father that what had happened to him.
We went onwards to County Meath. When going along a narrow road, some of the cars in front of us went into the ditch. We had to leave our cars on the road as we could not pass the car in the ditch, and could not reverse our cars on the narrow road in the pitch darkness.
Peter Clifford witness statement. Donal O'Hannigan took me out of the shed again and asked me would I go into Dublin and see how things were there. When I got into the GPO, James Connolly was sitting at a table writing. I stood before the table, saluted him, and told him who sent me to the city. I told him certain things that happened on our way. He got up, shook me by the shoulder and said, "The brave men of Louth." He told me to go back to where the men were and get them into the city. Going up to the village of Finglas, I saw horse soldiers and RIC men with rifles. I decided to go back to the city as I was afraid they would arrest me.
We proceeded to an old barn and made ourselves comfortable. In the barn we were joined by about 14 or 15 strangers to me. I soon found out that these strangers were of the Meath men coming to join us. We spent the best of the night in the barn, and before daylight on Tuesday morning we got on the move again. We kept on marching for 2 hours and then got word to halt. The volunteers did take over Tyrellstown house in County Dublin for the week of Easter.
Arthur Greene has mentioned that he could hear the rifle fire from what was happening in Dublin at the time.
And they could hear and see the fight going on in the city.
I'm here outside Tyrellstown House, which is where a number of the volunteers would have gone from after being at the barn. They stayed here for about 7 or 8 days, Now, Donal O'Hannigan, who was the commandant, he ordered everybody to go around to the outhouses that were there to maybe take up posts there. One of the days, a lady had gone past, and Arthur Greene and Peter Byrne, I believe, had gone out to interrogate her to find out what it was that she was doing. But it turned out that she was quite sympathetic to the cause in terms of what they were standing for. So this lady said that she would bring them dispatches and keep them up to date in terms of what was happening in Dublin, to try to keep them in the loop. Although at this stage the men didn't know, do they go in, do they not go in? So it was just a case of having to bide their time. Donal O'Hannigan then went on to find Thomas Ashe, while the rest of the volunteers stayed here in the house waiting. Tom Ashe had sent word that he'd meet O'Hannigan the following day, but no word came on Thursday, and no scouts could get through enemy lines to the city. No word had arrived on Friday. On Saturday, Ashe said he would meet him at Dan McAllister's house in Turvey. When O'Hannigan got to Turvey, Dan McAllister got out of the house and shouted, "Go away, you will be caught at any moment." I said, "Where is Tom Ashe?" He replied, "He is a prisoner, and they are looking for you. Go away at once." O'Hannigan had went back through Swords and Blanchardstown. They went back to their camp at Tyrellstown. So eventually what happened was O'Hannigan had come back, and he told them that we had to evacuate. Okay, so the men decided, okay, we're going to evacuate the house.
But they remained here for the week until they were ordered then to evacuate the house, because the British Army Lancer Corps were going to blow them up with artillery pieces. So. And an hour later the military arrived. They got this information from a scout. At 10 a.m. the military were advancing on their present position. We decided to stand our ground and fight, but the military came and passed by without even looking.
On Monday evening, the 1st of May 1916, a girl brought word from Dublin that it was all over. They evacuated the camp and retired across country to Dunboyne. Only 13 men were left now out of the 90.
Sean Mac Entee became separated from the others. He went to Finglas to Mountjoy Square. He fell in with volunteers from the Dublin Bread Company. He went to Earl Street and Noblest Confectionery. The street was on fire through heavy shelling, and they evacuated into Earl Street, Cathedral Street, and got into the window of the GPO in Henry Street. When the roof of the GPO was on fire, he went with the O'Rahilly to secure the Williams and Woods factory, but on the way the O'Rahilly was shot. He took refuge in a stable. Willie Pearce and Captain Breen went with the white flag. They were brought around O'Connell Street and brought to the Rotunda. He was taken to Richmond Barracks. Then he was put on a cattle ship as prisoners and brought to England. After the week of 1916, Peter Clifford was taken to Dundalk Jail, Richmond Barracks, Barlinnie Prison in Glasgow, and Frongach Prison.
James was an ordinary member, IRB, and subsequently he went on then to become commandant of the then IRA.
I went to Ardee Station where I had a friend who got me a railway ticket for Dundalk. J. Dunne came on a bread cart to Dundalk. When I came to Dundalk Station, it was guarded by soldiers and police. I got through them, I got home and rested after a few days. I got word to clear away somewhere as I was going to be arrested. At that time, every person was watched. Owen Clifford and I got across Liverpool through some sailor friends of mine.
After Tyrellstown, he also went to Liverpool, where he spent a number of years with.
O'Hannigan announced that he was demobilising us. He shook hands with me. We all felt disappointed. Everyone went home. We were arrested, surrounded by soldiers, handcuffed in pairs, marched first up to Dundalk Jail and then to the station. We were taken under strong military escort to Richmond Barracks. 25 of us were put into a big room. We had to lie on the bare floor without bedclothes. So this is where Arthur Greene was taken. We're outside Richmond Barracks here, and they're brought up in columns of 4 and put into a room of 25 people. In Richmond Barracks were Arthur Griffith, Sean McDermott, Darrell Figgis. Sean McDermott was executed while we were there. Herty was deported to England. I was released. On my arrival in Dundalk, a lot of friends met me and escorted me home. The 12 or 14 days from I left town on Easter Sunday 1916 until my return home again was one of great physical hardship and mental strain. It was our willpower that kept us going. It took men of great physical endurance to carry on.
And one thing that I would say about my great-granduncle Arthur Greene, that if it wasn't for him, I probably wouldn't be telling these stories that are on the YouTube channel, Easter Rising Stories. So to say, am I proud of him? Yes, I am. I'm very proud of him. I may have never met him, but you know something, he did what he thought was right, and that's what's important.
Well, in the merry month of May, from me home I started, left the girls at home. I saw the broken hearted saluted father there. Kiss me, darling mother, I drank a pint to bear me grief and thirst. There's mother then off the reef the corn, laver I was born. Cow the stout big taunt, the bandish ghost and gobble and bran you pair the blouse. Rattle all of the bars, frighten all of the hogs for the rocky road. The double I want the 3 for 5. Hot the hair and Tony down the rocky road and all the ways. The double I want for Dundalk. I'm mullingar the night and rest the limbs so where he started by that light next morning light the nerdy took a drop of the pure. Hit me heart and sinking, that's the paddy's show. Whenever he's on to sing it to see the lassie smile, laughing all the while. Had she curious to set your heart the bubble and asked me was I higher wages I required. I was almost tired for the rocky road, the double I want the 3 for 5. Hut the hair and turn you down the rocky road and all the ways the double I mark for Dundalk. And Dublin next arrive, I thought there'd be the pity to be so soon deployed. The view at Athens City, but then they took a stroll. All among the quality bundle it was towing in elite localities on to cross me mind. When I looked behind the bundle, could I find upon me stick a wobble like fire and further road. Said we kind of broke, I wasn't much of vogue for the rocky road. The double I want the 3 for 5. Put the hair and Antonia down the rocky road and all the ways. The double I want for Dundalk. From there I got away, me spirits never fail. I landed on the quay just as the ship was sailing. Captain at me rod said the loon that had he well, and I jumped aboard a cabin film for people down among the pigs. Played some earthy jigs, done some ropey rigs. The water round me bubbling up the Holyhead. I wish myself to dead at the furnace dead for the rocky road. The double I want the 3 for 5. Hut the hair and the down the rocky road and all the ways. The double I went for Dundalk. The boys of Liverpool, when they safely land, I call myself a fool. I couldn't no longer stand, the blood began to boil. Hampered I was losing, poured on air and soil. They began the prisoner on me, so says I. Lately I'll apply, God, we boys a boy, they saw I was a hobbling down a loud hooray. Joined in the affray, quickly cleared away for the rocky road. The double I want the 3 for 5. Want the hair and Tony down the rocky road and all the ways. The double I went for Dundalk.